honored delegates, dear friends, today I speak on behalf of millions of Belarusians who have boldly chosen freedom, democracy, and human rights. For this choice, we paid a high price. Thousands have faced repression and been thrown into prison. Hundreds of thousands had to flee. Many were tortured or even killed. A ruthless dictator dragged our country into the criminal Russian war against Ukraine. 9 million people were taken hostage for the imperial ambitions of two usurpers. Now they're deploying Russian nuclear weapons on our territory in violation of non-proliferation treaties. The Belarusian state is no longer performing its duties to its citizens. It's already denied people their right to apply in UN courts, which was always the last and only resort to seek justice. And last week, they deprived Belarusians in exile of the possibility of renewing their documents, making hundreds of thousands potentially stateless. It goes without saying that the foundational human rights principles of the United Nations are being systematically violated. Perhaps there is not a single UN charter that hasn't been violated by Lukashenko's regime. While the terror has paralyzed our society, it didn't suppress our will to live in a free country where every citizen is respected. And every day, our people continue their peaceful struggle, even when it costs their freedom or life. Our people demonstrate extraordinary unity, solidarity, and adherence to the UN's fundamental values. I ask the United Nations to keep Belarus high on the agenda. I ask you to employ all available tools to secure the release of political prisoners and bring the perpetrators to justice. I call on UN courts to initiate proceedings against the regime in Minsk, which has a long record of crimes, from forced disappearances, child abductions, and torture to acts of aggression and crimes against humanity, as articulated by the UN High Commissioner on Human Rights. Even though the UN identified those responsible for hijacking the Ryanair flight in 2021, they were never brought to account. And it creates dangerous precedents for others and only strengthens the feeling of impunity. I also believe that the UN shouldn't provide the tribute to those who systematically violate the rules of this respected organization. The regime of Lukashenko doesn't represent the Belarusian people and should be excluded from UN fora. I'm also calling on the UN Security Council to put Belarus on the agenda to discuss the deployment of nuclear weapons and the direct threat to our independence. The regime of Lukashenko has become a material threat to international peace and security. This threat should be met with strong and decisive actions of the world community. Belarus needs your immediate attention and action. Thousands of political prisoners are behind bars. Hundreds of thousands had to flee because of repressions. It's far beyond another domestic crisis. It's a humanitarian catastrophe that has to be addressed by the United Nations right now. As the world comes together in New York this week, the UN must stand firm in defending its fundamental principles and values. We have to deliver on the promise that the UN was founded to uphold. It's a pivotal moment in history, and I ask the world community to stand with us as we fight for the ever existence of our country and people.